Hello everyone, I'm here with Kyle Boggemes. He's also one of the people who when I posted on Twitter that I'm looking for people to interview, he said that he would like to be one of them. And here we are today. We don't really actually know each other that much. I think we played once at a GP at some point in maybe America. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I think it was Grand Prix Madison. I think you were playing Black Green and I was playing Niv Mizzet, that Just Guy Niv Mizzet deck.
Oh, that's not like that long ago, right? It's like maybe 2 years back or 3 years back or something like that.
Yeah, I want to say it was 2019, but it could have been 2018. It's kind of all blending together now.
Yeah, I played like the Black Green deck with like Valgrowth, Bulker, Jade Light Ranger and stuff, right?
Yeah, I couldn't remember exactly like when we played, but I feel like it was when we were in the top tables, and I'm pretty sure you beat me, and I think you were my only loss that day.
Nice. Feels good.
The deck was sweet. Yeah.
For a little bit of introduction, Kyle has a Pro Tour top 8 in I think San Diego. That was like the Junt tournament won by Simon Goertzen. I think you even lost to him in the top 8. Besides that, you have a 9th place at a different Pro Tour. You also won a GP and you have like bunch more top 8s. But I think you were like more active when I still wasn't like playing Pro Tours, you know. So we never really actually played in the same era. So it will be interesting for me to find out more. Before we start talking about Magic, when I ask Kyle on Facebook, I always do that before interviews. I like ask people what they're doing so I can ask questions better. He said that he's like super busy with work, so he's like, his hobby is basically just Magic. He doesn't really have anything else going on. So I'm just very interested to hear what you're doing for work. If you're like so busy, if you can talk about it a little bit, that would be great.
Yeah. So I'm a senior financial analyst at a network security company called Barracuda Networks. So we sell like network firewalls, web application firewalls, disaster recovery, etc. So it's a very technical company, which is a little challenging because working as a financial analyst, it's kind of it was a weird transition. It's actually a little bit like Magic now. So I handle all the technical forecasting. So when we do budgeting for an upcoming fiscal year, I work with the engineering teams and say, hey, we're going to spend X million dollars on servers and all these service costs. So it's a very complicated job, and there's kind of like no end to the complexity, because when you kind of my motto there is kind of like everything that can go wrong will go wrong. All the timelines are going to be delayed, and we're going to run into a bunch of stuff we don't expect. So like the more I talk to people, the more I learn about how my job works too. I kind of do the same thing every year, and I just get better at it. So then I get to delve deeper into the nuances. So it's very much like Magic in that respect. I've been working there for almost 8 years now.
Wow.
Doing the same job. It's it was actually my first job out of college. I started as an intern, and I'm just kind of thinking about more strategy related to the job, and there's a lot of room for advancement beyond what I'm doing right now. So it's very much like Magic in that respect.
That's extremely like a broad term, but if you can maybe talk about like you just go to work on like Monday, you show up, like what do you do? I obviously understand that it probably differs from day to day, but if you can just like say something about that.
Yeah. So it's a very it's a very high visibility role. I am the finance business partner for the CTO, the CIO, the VPs of technical support and manufacturing. So I'm dealing with a lot of people who are not only very good at their job, they have, they have strong opinions on how they want to handle things. And me, my job is to make sure they stay within their budget. So I kind of have to tactfully, make sure I'm doing what I need to do while also acknowledging it's a very human role, where it's very people oriented, despite it being so data driven at the same time.
That's interesting. I don't know anything about it, so I'm not really gonna add anything to it. But thanks for the explanation. Let's talk about Magic from now on. As I said at the beginning, we kind of played at different times. So I never really talked to you. I don't really know that much. I don't even know whether you were like an actual pro at certain point, or if you just like became pro by an accident because you just did well at multiple tournaments. So if you can just like talk about your Magic story, maybe the beginnings as well. Just go ahead.
Yeah. So I started in 1995. I'm going to use air quotation for playing, because I was like 6 years old. So it really kind of taught me how to read. The reason I got into it is because my cousins Adam and Steven, they were my older cousins. I just emulated them. So they were teenagers, and Magic was getting popular around 94, 95. It was picking up steam. So I was just like, hey, that's what they're doing, so that's what I'm gonna do too. I'm not really sure how to do it, but that's what I'm doing now. So that was kind of how I got started, just mimicking. But I started playing in tournaments 2001, end of 01. So I think the newest set was, I think Odyssey had just come out, and I just got into playing FNMs at my local mall. So I didn't even know what Standard was. I was just like, this is a tournament. I didn't even know they had tournaments. I'm playing it. So that was how I got started. Just like kind of seeing that tournaments existed. I knew nothing about it. And since 2001, I've played a tournament almost every month since 01, so I haven't really taken any breaks since then. And I was in middle school in 2001, so me and a group of friends,
I'm sorry to interrupt, were there like a lot of people back then during high school just like playing Magic in school, or that wasn't the case for you?
Yeah, we had, I want to say there's like 5 or 6 people who were playing tournaments in my school. So we didn't play at school very often, but like, come Friday, we would all carpool to Friday Night Magic because we didn't have a license. So we had to coerce someone's parents into driving us every week, but we usually found a way to get there. So yeah, it was more just, group of friends, common interest, and then we'd play test for tournaments. And that same group, we kind of hung out for like the next couple of years. Some of us fell off, and then others like me, we just kept going on with it for now decades. And we maybe play some PTQs. Yeah, so it was. It was cool. I was lucky to have that group for sure. So
actually, like the first time you started going to PTQs, that was with people from the high school, right? Or that wasn't the case?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I carpooled with some friends from high school, middle school, and I think the first one I played was in 2003. So, and it was, I actually remember this one. I basically showed up with a standard mono black control deck because I had it from FNM. And it was extended. I had no clue what the extended metagame was.
Wow.
And for those of you listening who don't know what extended is, it's basically the precursor to modern, but it was just less popular than modern. I just played basically a standard deck with a few cards that were not legal in standard.
Did you win any matches?
Quick 0-3 drop. No.
Okay. No. Yeah, I was wondering.
Everyone was much better than. Yeah, they're all better than my FNM opponents. Even though we had pretty strong competition in my FNM, they're all better, and yeah, I got crushed. Not sure even why I wanted to play more PTQs after that. It was pretty bad.
Mm-hmm. So you what happened after that? You just went to more PTQs anyway, despite getting crushed with that mono-black deck, and eventually you qualified, or like how did you actually got yourself to the Pro Tour?
Yeah, it was. So when I started playing Magic, I was actually really bad.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, it was like my first game that I actually played that was a strategy game. So like I had no background. I had no theory, no roots. So like I was actually looking back on it, it's actually kind of surprising I even went anywhere in this game. I qualified for my first Pro Tour in 2006. It was kind of, I was like kind of hanging out with a different group of friends at that point, because a few of them had dropped off. I was in high school. Let's see, some of the people, DJ Kastner, I don't know if you know him. He was another big Michigan grinder at the time. Him and I just like played basically all the tournaments in the mid 2000s. I ended up qualifying for Pro Tour Charleston. That was like a really sweet Pro Tour. It was Team Unified Ravnica Block Constructed. So like three people with the unified deck construction rules played Ravnica Block Constructed, which was a tournament where it was like the only tournament of that format that ever existed. Mm-hmm. Even the PTQ system was Team Unified Standard, so it was just for that one tournament. But it was really fun because you play like Dark Confidant and Remand in Block Constructed. So like there were a lot of sweet cards that you could play.
That sounds pretty sweet.
Yeah, that was my. It was my first Pro Tour, so that was cool. I actually qualified when the Pro Tours used to have a last chance qualifier, and I just went on a vacation to visit my aunt. So my brother and I like needed a third for the last chance qualifier. So we got our friend Vince from Michigan to be our third, and I just had all the decks for standard because at that point I was like super into Magic. Mm-hmm. I had multiple copies of every standard deck because the cards weren't as expensive back then. I was like trading for all the cards. So I was like, here, my brother Drew, who's not, he wasn't like super into Magic or anything, and Vince hadn't been playing for, he's kind of like, hey, Kyle, I'm like back into it. I was like, cool, here's a deck. We need a third. And then we ended up grinding in like at 2 a.m. the night before the Pro Tour. So it was pretty cool. I was 15 at the time.
Oh, wow. How old were you when you played the first one? Because this wasn't the first one, right?
Yeah. Pro Tour Charleston in 06 was the first one.
Oh, I see. Sorry.
That was... I was 15. My brother was 12. And then Vince, our third, was like 18. It's actually kind of funny because there was like a lot of Twitter controversy over the last couple of weeks about if you can play a PTQ if you're under 18. I was playing Pro Tours. I qualified for another one before I was 18 too. So it was like it was kind of funny because I did actually need my friend Vince's consent to actually play the tournament because I was under 18. My brother did too. So they're like the judges were like, you need your parents' signature to play in this tournament because it's for money and you're going to be filmed and all these different reasons. And I was like, oh yeah, this is my guardian.
Did they have no problem? Did they have no problem with that?
At first they did, and I was like, yeah, I don't know what else to tell you. Like, that's kind of
That seems actually weird to me because I remember that like a couple of years back, my friends were 17 and they traveled to a GP in Germany and they didn't let them play. So I'm surprised that they did let you play, but.
Me too. I actually think that the rules were much more loose back then. They kind of like they were inquisitive that this guy was my guardian. they didn't believe me, but they're kind of like, I won't stop this.
Yeah, nice. So,
but yeah,
what went from there?
So the first Pro Tour, that was a team one. I ended up just kind of after the first Pro Tour, like back then Pro Tours worked really differently. There was like they had a completely different pro club. They had all these awesome benefits that don't exist now. Like there's this like they called it a pro lounge, which was actually really cool. There was like a ping pong table. There was like a place where you could play video games. There's like this cool lounge area with TVs, like right in the middle of the Pro Tour venue. It was they had catered food. It was really cool. They kind of gradually scaled it back over time, but at that point, it was like a great time to get into it because like once you're there, you're like, wow, I have to get back here because this is what it's about. This is where I need to be, So that was like a really big catalyst to me, just continuing to be on the Grand Prix and PTQ grind.
So you didn't actually got onto a gravy train. For people who don't know what it means that you qualify for the Pro Tours up until you finished second, or did that happen even before that?
Yeah, so I Pro Tour San Diego, it took place in I think it was February of 2010. I got second, lost to Simon Goertzen, who was Simon's like pretty much a household name, like with his coverage as well as his Pro Tour title. But like, I didn't really know Simon at that time. I didn't even, I like barely even knew what his last name was. He was like super unknown as well as myself. We're really unknown at that point. And Simon was, I think he like just did judging for the most part. So that was
really?
like, I think that was kind of surprising. Yeah, he's known as being like, I consider him to be like a great theorist. He's really good at telling me like how games work, how people need to be approaching certain matchups, etc. But yeah, back then I think he was, if I recall correctly, I think he was just like a judge who like spiked a Pro Tour.
Impressive.
Yeah, that was he's very good. That was my fourth Pro Tour that I played at that point. I played Pro Tour Valencia in 2007. That was won by Remy Fortier with this really sweet extended 4-color counterbalance deck because Countertop was just picking up steam in 2007. And then 2008, I won a PTQ for Pro Tour Hollywood that was won by Charles Gindy with Black Green Elves. That actually, a quick side note on Pro Tour Hollywood. Sure. The Michigan PTQ scene at that point was incredibly competitive. Like, at that time, the kind of the place to be for PTQs was the New York, New Jersey area, back where like Osip Lebedovich and there's just like I can't even think of all the names. Patrick Sullivan was there, but a bunch of ringers in the New York, New Jersey area. That was like kind of a place to play PTQs if you were serious. But Michigan was actually a pretty competitive area as well. The PTQ I won to qualify for Hollywood. The top 8 was me, Patrick Chapin, Cedric Phillips, Owen Turtenwald, and Adam Yurchek.
Nice.
So that was like, and these guys were like all in their prime at this point too. So like that was like another big tournament where I'm like, okay, cool. Like I could definitely see progress just like making it that far, because top 8ing a PTQ is like a big deal when like that's the talent pool that's able to make the top 8. Sam Black also showed up to a lot of those tournaments as well, being from Wisconsin, and Go Dennis Vidigaris. So there's like a ton of great players that showed up in PTQs where I grew up. So yeah, it was really cool. It was a big win. But yeah, so Pro Tour San Diego, to answer your question, that basically got me on the gravy train. I was just I basically had to win a PTQ. I would show up to the Pro Tour. I would do medium to bad. It wasn't good enough to get me to the next one. So I was just kind of back in the PTQ scene, slumming it again. And then at that point, about once a year, I would get to the point where I would, spike another tournament, get to qualify for a Pro Tour. And then, Pro Tour San Diego is the one where I just kind of, broke that trend and actually had a great finish. I
want to ask about that tournament a little bit if I can. The popular belief of Junt is that the deck is like kind of random because of Cascade. So I just wanted to ask about whether you think that like the Junt mirrors were actually like really skill intensive, and like the maybe the card choices and the way you played mattered a lot, or do you think the tournament was just like kind of random? Just to clarify.
Yeah, so the top 8 of that Pro Tour was very Jund heavy because it was, in retrospect, it was very clear that Jund was the best deck in that format. But World Wake had just come out. Jace the Mind Sculptor, that was the first Pro Tour that Jace was legal. So coming in, kind of like the story coming into that tournament was Jace is clearly busted. But like, how do you build around this card? Because prior to World Wake, it wasn't very, like the blue decks were like kind of medium, and Jund was already a pretty good deck. So it's, it was the case of every Pro Tour where you come in and like, either you play the deck with the target on its head and you get slaughtered, or you play it and you look really smart. Jund for that tournament ended up being the deck where if you played it, you looked really smart. But even in the Swiss, I didn't actually face that many Jund mirrors. It wasn't clear how to build around Bloodbraid Elf at that point. Like, you could also play Stoneforge Mystic, which, Louis Scott Vargas, he had his famous 16-0 run in that tournament, playing a Naya Stoneforge deck. So it wasn't even clear how to build around Bloodbraid Elf at that point. So to answer the main question of like, is the mirror match random and all that, there was definitely a fair amount of randomness. But when I took Simon to a game 5. The 2 games I lost coming up to game 5 of the finals, my deck just like did not come together. And I played Jund in the top 8 as well, and I won that match 3-0 because I was best 3 out of 5 back then. I felt pretty confident in the mirror, but like everyone's at that point is so good that it was very, it just settles at 50-50, but there's still a good amount of decisions to make.
I see. Yeah, I actually I kind of agree with what you're saying. I think, no matter which deck you play, it's like usually pretty hard anyways, and just like people just like tend to say that like the Jund deck is random or whatever, but it's just not true. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and Jund definitely was like the right deck to pick in that tournament, not only because it ended up being the best deck, but yeah, since everyone is so good at the Pro Tour, at that point in time, I tried to pick decks that were deliberately less complicated than whatever the best deck wound up being, that usually has more customization and nuance to it. So like I played like at Pro Tour Amsterdam the next year. I played it was whatever however the best way to build Scape Shift was at the time. So it's like, you just ramp and play Scape Shift. So I thought like, hey, maybe I can spend like 6 turns tanking really hard about these 6 turns that are required in each game, and I'll get those turns right. And I won't worry about like outplaying my opponent too much, because I don't think I'll have an edge there.
That makes sense. So you had this big finish, but as you said, you went to college and you're already working 8 years in the company that you went to work for after college. So it seems like Magic was always kind of a side hobby. Would you say that's correct, or was there ever a time where you like tried really hard to maybe like become an actual like big time pro? Or did you ever consider that?
Yeah, so when you're a teenager, you don't always have the ability to see how your life will pan out 10 steps in advance. So when I was in high school and college, Magic was definitely my top priority. But I kind of went through the motions of getting at least passable grades in high school and college because I knew that I would regret it if I didn't. But like it's hard to know like what a job's going to look like, or like which type of job you have if you like put effort into school or if you don't. Like it's kind of hard to see the payoff. So I kind of phoned it in because I was really more interested in playing Magic at the time.
Yeah.
Like I would drive 10 hours to a Grand Prix. I did that like, I don't know, over a dozen times when I was in high school and just starting college. So Magic was very much my top priority at that point, actually. And it was definitely a big catalyst to, having the big Pro Tour finish. Like I qualified by getting 9th on breaks at a Grand Prix that was Zendikar sealed. So I had that limited knowledge, which is what helped me go 5-1 at Pro Tour San Diego in the draft portion. That was like a big part of it. So I was just like playing a ton at that point. And for Pro Tour San Diego, like I was dialed in. Even the week before the Pro Tour, I had won a PTQ in extended with this boom bust Bloodbraid Elf Naya Zoo deck that me and DJ Kastner, who I mentioned before, we kind of co-created this deck, and it was like just a spot-on metagame deck. So like we were just like, the two of us didn't really care about school that much, but yeah, I just kind of stayed in it. I decided to change my mind later in life where it's like I should probably care about school a little bit more at this point. Maybe rein in the Magic at that point.
You said that Magic is your main hobby. You probably spend a lot of time on it even nowadays. When you're not working, you probably play a lot. You like also write articles, I think. How much are you actually playing nowadays? Are you maybe playing just to like have a good knowledge to like write a good article, or are you maybe like trying to win one of the qualifiers? What is going on with you right now?
Prior to COVID, I really liked playing in-person tournaments. It was I definitely appreciate the in-person interaction more than playing online. But with COVID, I've kind of adjusted. I've been playing a ton of Arena. I don't really want to take the plunge into Magic Online to play Modern, which I prefer Modern, but Standard's intricate enough at this point where that's kind of where I've been spending most of my time. So I basically use that to not only write articles, and I like tweet about all my decks and stuff. I think that's fun. It's a fun way to relax for me. I would like to like qualify for like all the big tournaments. I haven't qualified anything since we've kind of moved to the all online platform. Mainly because everyone's just so good. It's really hard. The last weekend's PTQ, I played against everyone I played was so good. I was like 1-2, and then I played against Paul Rietzel. He knocked me out, and it's like what Well, why is this happening? Like, this shouldn't happen in a, just like a random weekend PTQ, which is basically what it is. So I'm just like, I haven't got there yet. It's a lot harder in this day and age. It'll be nice to go back to physical tournaments where the pool is, not quite as skilled. That's really where I'm able to shine. I'm sure everybody else is.
Yeah, it's definitely super hard in Arena because the people you meet there are just like grinders who play all the time, and if you're not super well prepared, you're just gonna get crushed. It's really difficult.
Yeah, and it's the metagames move so fast. There used to be a little bit of a guessing game as to what level everyone was on. Now you just like with this PTQ, I had some errands to run, so I wanted to get my deck registered as soon as possible. So what I ended up doing was just signing up before the MPL deck list went live, which was like an hour later. And I knew that 1 hour was going to dramatically affect my result in that tournament. I kind of didn't have a choice just due to time constraints, but I knew that I was sacrificing something just because I couldn't immediately copy and paste whatever like optimized version of the archetype that I was playing was.
Yeah. Okay, I think I've asked everything I wanted to ask. Thanks for your time. I don't want to make the interview too long because people don't want to really watch our long interviews. But I had fun. Thanks for answering my question. If you guys like the video, please click on the like and subscribe button, and maybe see you in future tournaments, hopefully. Bye bye.
Yeah, I hope to see you in person real soon. That would be ideal for all of us, I think.
Yeah. So bye.